Alrighty, everyone. I would like to say hello. It is 12 o'clock noon on the dot. So we are going to kick off the very first IT Office Hours session for 2020. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes out of your afternoon on this Wednesday to invest in some education. Today we're going to be discussing the cloud and just some frequently asked questions, maybe some of the things that you've thought to yourself or you've wondered, but you aren't really wanting to talk to a technician about. The cloud is kind of one of those, well, it's a topic that many people get a little bit confused by, but it's a big topic right now in technology, and many of the software platforms and even hardware solutions that we offer are now, enabled with cloud hybrid solutions and those types of things. So we kind of just want to dig in today, talk about what the cloud is at a very high level, and then some of the frequently asked questions that we get here. So that's kind of that. So let's kick this bad boy off. So without further ado, the first thing I always do is just kind of give you a brief rundown. We do have some new faces joining us today, so welcome. This is IT Office Hours with Andromeda Technology Solutions. My name is Abby Libiota. I am the marketing manager over here, and we started this in the middle of 2019 just to kind of offer a way, a way to have some free education, to connect with friends and clients and potential friends of Andromeda. We want to cover topics related to popular scams, criminal techniques, so that you guys can protect yourselves, tips and tricks with maybe popular software solutions that we're seeing being deployed, things that we think you might find useful. We talk about compliance here and there where it's needed. We have many clients, and really any client that we have has some type of a HIPAA regulation requirement, because that's really just what it takes to be in business. So, we really just want to take 15 minutes every month. Typically, it's on the third Wednesday. We dig into a topic that's purely educational for you. Feel free to share these with anybody you think that you might find them useful. And like I said, today we're really going to be digging into what's with this cloud thing anyway, right? What is the cloud? What does that even mean? So the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of share a little bit of humor. Here around the office, the techs, it goes without saying that technicians are technical, but they also have a great little sense of humor here at Andromeda. So the first thing that I did when prepping for this webinar was ask them what kind of jokes they had to throw at me that I could share with you guys about the cloud. And I got a couple of funny little responses. One of our senior techs has this printout at his desk, which we always get a kick out of. And, we've got Homer Simpson's dad yelling at a cloud, and it says, "Old man yells at cloud." And oftentimes I think we've got this vision of the cloud as an actual thing floating in the middle of the space. So this one was a little bit funny. I stumbled across this one, kind of funny, a guy going, "I'm uploading my data to the cloud," and he's got a slingshot of his stuff, and there's somebody in the background going, "I'm pretty sure that's not how it's done. We don't just throw stuff into the air and it magically appears in the cloud." And then my personal favorite here, I'm a big dog lover. It says, "Why dogs love the internet." And we've got a kid here saying that the cloud ate his homework, and the dog says, "Finally, vindication." So the next thing I'm going to do here is break all of everyone's hearts, and I'm going to break it to you that the cloud is not actually a cloud. In fact, the cloud typically is going to look kind of like this image on this slide does here. And that is because there is no cloud. It's just somebody else's computer, right? That's another popular joke in the tech field, because again, we've got this idea of the cloud as an imaginary space, when in reality, the cloud for most cases is just you taking the responsibility of the management of an on-premises environment that you are responsible for, and you are going to transfer that over to a third party that you pay to take all of that heavy lifting. So when we talk about the cloud, what we're really talking about is a concept that's cloud computing. And what that means is, the cloud is based on the concept of cloud computing, or the use of a network of remote servers hosted on the internet to store, manage, and process data, rather than the local server or personal computer that you may be using at this time. You may have one server at your office, you may have multiple servers, there's a variety of ways this shows up. But for all intents and purposes, what this means is that you are making the choice from a business perspective to no longer take over and manage that environment, the environment that your data lives in. You're not going to be responsible to do that anymore. You're going to have a third party, like I said. That could be a big company like, let's say, Azure, or Amazon, AWS, or you might be able to create your own cloud environment. There's a bunch of different ways that this shows up in your business, but for all intents and purposes, again, all it means is that instead of having a physical server in your building that you have to pay or you have to manage yourself to maintain, you are taking that and that's becoming somebody else's issue in some other data storage facility, if that makes sense. So another thing I wanted to do, just kind of break this down, is break it to you that, you know, there are many popular programs, even if your business isn't 100% cloud-based, even if you've got a server on premises right now, the chances are that you are already using cloud technology in your personal and professional life. So there are some, I kind of just Googled and found the most popular programs that you may already use in the cloud. Some of these we use in Andromeda. I'm sure some of these are showing up in your business. Things like Salesforce, which is one of the leading CRMs in the business right now, Slack for your IM solution, Office 365, which we did a session on a couple months back. You know, all three of those are cloud-based. Your Dropbox, Adobe Creative Cloud, you know, all of those are the big names in the space. Separately, you know, we've got finance software that we use online. We've got, for our medical clients, many of your EMRs and EHRs offer hybrid on-prem and cloud-based solutions. I know Greenway has a cloud-based solution, NextGen, Epic, all of them have cloud-based environments that are available to you. On the legal side, we've got a lot of legal clients. You know, many of the practice management softwares that you're utilizing are cloud-based. Essentially, if it's a software as a service-based application, you know that it's probably going to be using cloud technology. And the reason I want to bring this up is because sometimes when we talk about like the quote-unquote cloud, people just get a little bit nervous because they think it's something new and they don't recognize that we're really already using these softwares and these tools day to day. I mean, many of us are already using voice over IP hosted phone systems. That's a cloud-based technology. So I just wanted to make sure that we talked about the fact that, you know, even if your business itself isn't 100% cloud-based at this time, there are probably elements of your business, maybe hardware solutions or software solutions that are cloud-based that you're already using, that are dependable, that are easy to navigate. You know, all those barriers, we get a little nervous. I wanted to make sure that, you know, we talk about the fact that it's really okay. The cloud isn't that foreign of a concept or an idea to us. So I'm going to get into some frequently asked questions, but before I do, I wanted to just break down some of the high-level pros and cons for you guys. And again, it goes without saying, every single business is going to have a unique setup, approach, and use for cloud-based solutions and cloud environments. So I don't mean to take responsibility or accountability off of myself in this session, but if you've got questions about how the cloud can work for your business, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to, you know, myself at the end of this session, your account manager, or, you know, any of your contacts here at Andromeda, or, you know, whoever handles your IT, the IT for your business. You know, these are discussions that really need to be happening. You know, after we get a high level description of the technology, we want to talk about how that fits into your business, and that's, you know, a little bit more of an intimate discussion. But so some of the pros of the cloud, and this is by no means exhaustive, these are just kind of the top 6 that I grabbed and that I think are important, are, you know, you have an improved disaster recovery potential. So with cloud-based technology, typically you take backups more often. The data is stored off-site. It's accessible very quickly. So if there was ever, let's say, a file deleted or an incident at your facility, if you have cloud-based technology, you know, you can maybe be working remote and accessing your data. You can recover your data quicker, and it really just improves the disaster recovery response as a whole. Second is going to be increased productivity and accessibility. One of the biggest things that the cloud allows you to do is, for the most part, in most cases, it allows you to access data, programs, software when you're not physically present in your office, right? And we know that's very important in 2020. We've got, you know, our staff is working on the go. We're working from airports. We're working at home. We're working after hours. You know, that's just the way business is done this year and in the future. So we want to make sure that we're giving our staff and our teammates the ability to do their jobs, you know, on the fly as needed. And the cloud is a great way to get that done, because all you got to do is grab an internet connection and log in, and you're ready to work. The third thing I threw on here is ease of scalability. So businesses change from day to day. Your needs are changing from day to day. You may be growing. You may you know, have new demands, new data needs, new bandwidth needs. And the great thing about the cloud is, as opposed to having physical equipment on site that you need to then invest in expanding, the cloud makes it very easy to scale up or down based upon the state of your business today. Then that also points to the fourth thing, which here is, fast changes when needed. With the cloud, if you determine that you need more data storage, you just buy that data and you've got it. And of course, I'm simplifying things here, but it really does make changes and updates a lot quicker. And again, I keep just leading into the next thing. So updates in real time. So when we're talking about software in the cloud, such as, let's say, Office 365, one of the great benefits that the cloud offers to you is, things are just updated in real time. Updates are able to be pushed out to devices, and things just end up getting closer and kind of managed in a more efficient and effective way with that. And then finally, now there's two parts to this, but with the cloud, you're typically going to see less upfront cost because the cloud solution itself is most likely going to be a lot lower in cost than an on-prem hardware investment. Now, it should be said that sometimes to be able to utilize cloud technology at your business, you may have to address certain infrastructure needs and updates that do incur costs. But overall, one of the pros of the cloud is that when you expand it out over the years, you are going to most likely see that it's going to be more cost beneficial to the business. So separately, I grabbed a few different cons or downsides to the cloud. So this isn't unilateral because, again, like I said, each instance, each environment is its own, and there may be situations where you don't need the internet, but in many cases, you do need to have an active internet connection to be able to access data on the go. So that can be a limitation for the cloud for you. Another con, and again, this could just as easily be a benefit to the cloud, but this is a subscription-based model. So historically, when you wanted to do an update to a software or a hardware at your business, that means that you're going to buy upfront, one time, a new server or new licenses or something of that nature. And it's an expenditure that you've got to deal with and budget for, but it's kind of done once it's done. With the cloud, you're signing on to what's called, a monthly recurring model where it's subscription based. So you're not paying as much by any means, but you're going to be paying for the services that you're receiving on a month-to-month basis. And certain agreements are going to require longer term contracts and agreements. But the big thing to be said there is just that it's a subscription based model, which is a little bit different than some of the project upfront costs you may be accustomed to with on-premises solutions. So another downside to the cloud is just going to be, and this is related to education, but it's that there are gray areas on the security and the responsibility. This is the area I see people get the most uneasy with, because they kind of just start to wonder, well, who owns my data, and who's responsible for securing things, and who's responsible for updating and managing. So the downside here really is only a downside if you don't do your homework. And so I would just encourage you to make sure that you dig into those types of questions. Who owns the data? Who's responsible for maintaining the data? Who handles the backups of the data? Separately, how does security in the environment get addressed? Who's responsible for that, right? All of those things that you're offloading to that third party, you just want to make sure you're asking those probing questions so that you've got a full picture, because from solution to solution and company to company, that may be handled a little bit differently. And then finally, I already kind of pointed to this in the previous slide, but one of the downsides that can happen with the cloud is, you can be ready to make the transition. You're excited to, offer the new productivity and accessibility to your team, but you may find that there are new bandwidth requirements and infrastructure requirements that you need to address to have a, functioning and well-oiled cloud environment. The reason for this is because historically, with an on-premises solution, all of your data, all of that traffic, all of that communication is happening internally, and you're communicating with the server. Whereas when you move things to the cloud, you're now depending on your internet and your infrastructure, your wireless infrastructure, to take on a lot more heavy lifting. Anything that we're adding to our infrastructure, any demand that we're pulling in with respect to bandwidth needs to be addressed, needs to be planned for, and needs to be tested out before we go and deploy. Things like, migrating to Office 365, migrating your entire server to the cloud, adding a hosted voice over IP phone system to your environment. All of those things are going to increase the demand on the bandwidth that you get from your internet service provider and the equipment that handles your network. So you want to make sure that you're discussing this with both of those parties. You need to discuss it with the vendor that supports and supplies your service from an internet perspective. And then you also definitely want to be discussing this with whoever handles and manages your IT so that you have all those bases covered. The last thing you want to do is to switch over to a subscription-based model, invest in the cloud services, and then find out that your infrastructure is not capable of handling the demands that you're going to put on it. So now we're going to switch on over to frequently asked questions, and I've got about 4 of those, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you guys may have. So first, and I kind of covered this, but I want to dig into it a little bit here. So the first question that we get asked is going to be, who owns my data? We run into many decision makers, managers, and professionals who get very uncomfortable because they start to worry that the data that was housed within their 4 walls historically is now in this imaginary cloud environment. And who owns that, and who can access it, and how does all of that work? So first, I have to say, this does vary from situation to situation and software to software and all those goodies. But for most cases and purposes, the way this works is the cloud provider or the software provider, such as an Office 365, Microsoft or Google, what they adhere to is what's called a shared responsibility model. And you can dig into and find the actual verbiage and get into the specifics of what each of the different vendors has to say about that. But for all intents and purposes, what this means is that when you make the decision to engage with a cloud provider or to migrate to the cloud, the provider or that vendor takes responsibility for the security, the upkeep, the uptime, and all of those nitty-gritty types of issues and responsibilities. They take all of that on with respect to the environment itself. So the place that you're uploading and hosting your data, the place that exists in is their responsibility. What's your responsibility is to make sure that the data itself is in good order. So that means that you're doing backups, you're making sure that you're uploading good data, and that if anything were to happen, if a teammate accidentally deleted half of a hosted server, or if a file gets deleted, or if, heaven forbid, if you got hit by ransomware, because that can happen in the cloud, the third-party provider is going to say, the protection of your data with that regard was on you. You deleted those files. Our environment was still steady. So you want to make sure that you have a plan in place, and there are backup solutions available at pretty reasonable costs for you to back up your cloud information and data, but that's definitely something you want to look at. But for all intents and purposes, you own your data. They own the environment. And that's pretty much what you can expect from the majority of those situations. The second question that I gravitated towards was kind of just what's the real difference between what I have now, and what I meant there would be an on-premise solution, and moving to the cloud. So what's the difference between the server that I have in my server room and uploading all of this to the cloud? So in many cases, moving to the cloud is a smooth transition from your perspective and a user perspective. The cloud is going to allow your team to work on the go, like we've talked about before, so that's a big difference, the accessibility and the ease that happens in. I know for myself, I do work remote at times, and the ability to get into my server and access files on the go without needing to call a teammate and have them then email it to me, and we've got multiple versions. I know there's frustrations where you get locked out of a document while you're trying to work on something collaboratively. Just having backups, being able to, you've got a sales guy in the field and he's on the way to his proposal, and he's got a big pitch he needs to deliver, and lo and behold, he realizes he forgot the USB stick. You've got the cloud. He can just grab that on the go. Any number of these situations that do happen day in and day out, they just go away because your data is with you no matter where you're at. So that would be definitely a really big thing. And the other thing to make sure that we mention here is that just because you're in the cloud and just because everybody does have the benefit of accessing things on the go, that doesn't mean that it's not secure. Your IT team should definitely make sure that we've got permissions in place, structure, organization. But that's probably one of the biggest differences. Aside from the physical component and the fact that you no longer have the equipment in your building for the most part. So there's a physical difference because we don't have to invest in servers and things of that nature. The payment is different because we're moving from lump sums to update hardware to a monthly subscription-based model just to kind of rent the service from the cloud provider or the software provider. And then separately, like the biggest thing, and I would say, it's night and day. I know our team is just loving the benefits that the cloud is offering us. I know our clients enjoy it, when they're on the go. So, the biggest thing is really just that ease of access, productivity, and accessibility boost. So another question that we get thrown a lot is, what do I need to migrate to the cloud, right? So everyone, for the most part, knows that this is a part of their this year, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, however many year plan. For the most part, in most instances, we're all going to be migrating to the cloud and adopting different cloud technologies, as time goes on, right? But if you were to make the decision that today we're going to make the call in 2020, we're going to migrate 100% to the cloud and we're going to get rid of our on-premises servers, what do you even need to do to make that happen? And the first thing I would say is definitely to call your IT service professional, because they're going to be able to run through the finer details of what you need to address. But you need to have discussions about how you work, what programs you use, what times you're going to be working. Like we were talking about, there's bandwidth concerns. We need to talk about what the demand is going to look like to your network. Most of all of this really just needs to start with a conversation and a plan, to be honest with you. And you need to make sure that you're looking into the most secure solution, looking into solutions that maybe adhere to, again, compliance standards. We work with a lot of professional services industries, medical, legal, financial, manufacturing. All of them have their own standards that they need to adhere to. So you want to make sure that your environment is going to meet those security and compliance standards. And I mean, really, this is just a discussion that you need to have with a trusted IT partner, where they're going to go over, again, your infrastructure, so the hardware needs that need to take place, how much data you have and how much data you need to have access to run the business. And then, just talks about use cases, what your employees and what your staff is doing from day to day, just to make sure that there won't be any types of communication issues, barriers, things that come up that we wouldn't have anticipated from the get-go, right? So my final question, and this is the big one that I know most people are going to be thinking, because we can talk about the cloud all day, but we need to talk about how much this is going to cost, right? So what are the costs for a cloud migration? So it all depends, to be honest with you, but there's a few variables that you've got to prepare for. So I've been kind of alluding to this, but many businesses do have infrastructure needs. We need to upgrade switches, firewalls, networking equipment, just to make sure that all of your teammates can get to their data quickly without any type of spinning wheels and wasted time, because it's the last thing we're trying to achieve here. So that can, it can have some costs, and depending on how the size of your business, that's going to dictate what the cost is, because you're going to have a solution that's scaled to fit your needs. Separately, there are subscription-based models, so we need to look into, how much data do you need, and different data tiers are going to have different costs associated. And then finally, there is labor required, right? Because if we've got a physical installation that we need to then back up, plan, prepare for, point things to new locations, all of those kinds of things, that does require time of technicians. So unfortunately, the one thing I can tell you, I can't give you a 100% answer for your business specifically on what it's going to cost. What I can tell you is that you can anticipate that this is an investment. But the most important thing when it comes to talking about costs of cloud migrations is that when we're comparing the cost of a migration to the cloud to a server or hardware update, we need to really run those costs out over the course of a few years. We know that on average at this time, a server, and I know most, all businesses can't do this every 3 years, 3 to 5 years, but on average, you really do want to look into updating and upgrading your server environment every 3 to 5 years, and that's kind of a bare minimum. So with that in mind, when you run out the costs of that every 3 years investing in a new server versus spanning that out month to month with a cloud-based subscription model, oftentimes you do actually end up with cost savings once you expand that out over time. So, like I said, most cloud services are billed on a monthly basis. The best way to ballpark what that might look like for your business would be definitely just to set up a meeting with one of the account managers here. I know that we offer, annual business reviews and things of that nature. That's definitely something that we can build into a technology roadmap for you and your business. But I mean, it goes without saying that this isn't something that's going to happen for free. It is an investment, but you're investing in that enhancement, and we've got to think about all the benefits, all of the ROI that you get just from the ease of use and the pains that we take off of our team with respect to trying to work on the go when we don't have a solution that's built to be used on the go, if you will. So that pretty much rounds out the 10,000-foot breakdown of the cloud that I prepared for you today. I do hope that that kind of was a softball introduction that makes you feel a little bit more confident and a little bit more prepared to have discussions with your team and your decision makers about the cloud. But at this point, I'd love to just open things up for any questions that you may or may not have to throw my way. And, you know, if I can't answer them, I'll definitely get somebody to you who can. And I also should definitely mention my email is right here on this screen. You can always send questions or recommendations for future sessions to me directly at Abby, A-B as in boy, I-L, at wenetwork.com. So let's see if we've got any questions waiting for us. I've got a question here about backing up data in the cloud, wanting to know if this applies to email as well. So it should be said that if you have an exchange, you know, a cloud-based exchange solution, or really, like I said, really any, you know, cloud-based solution that you're going to be using, you definitely want to have a backup for. We offer a solution called Backupify, and that is joined with Office 365, you know, an exchange online, and that is definitely going to be a great solution to look into. I would highly recommend it because, like I said, you know, ransomware, and that's something that we all know about, and I think we're all waiting for the day in fear that we get hit. So heaven forbid that happens. But, you know, backing up your online cloud-based email is going to be the best way to defend yourself against something like that. Hackers are sending out phishing emails and malicious emails every single day. I just got one, I think, 2 weeks ago. A client of ours was a web client. You know, we aren't managing their IT infrastructure at this time, but, you know, their email had been hacked, and somebody was sending out fake voicemails. So it was fake voicemail recordings to everybody in their contact book. And had anybody on our side clicked on that, it could have entered into our inboxes, done the same thing, and then caused us a lot of issues as well. But there are solutions out there that are meant to help you make sure that you've got backups of your email, so that if something like that were to happen to you, you can restore from backup, don't lose anything, and business is going to keep running business as usual, if you will. And that is a common misconception. Solutions like Office 365, G Suite, all of those, I mean, just because they're cloud-based does not mean they're immune, or that they cannot be vulnerable to cybercrime, hacking, ransomware, and all those terrible things. You know, I mean, it's really just how proactive we can be and how active we can be with training to make sure that employees don't fall victim. But you definitely want to consider backing up your cloud environment and applications and softwares. Alrighty, so it looks like I have covered pretty much everything there is to cover, or we don't have any questions just yet. But like I said, you can always feel free to send those to my email. It does make sense for me to just do a quick shout out real quick. We're going to be doing our next IT office hours session in February on Wednesday, February 19th. And we are going to be dedicating that time to an exciting topic. So within the last month and a half to 2 months, Andromeda has been making a transition from an internal messaging service called Slack to Microsoft Teams, which is part of Office 365. And doing that is a daunting task for any business. So I wanted to bring to you guys what we have done and we've developed from a management perspective at Andromeda to help our team make that transition, so that maybe it might be useful to you. And I will also be sharing with you some of my favorite tips, tricks, and just features in Microsoft Teams specifically, so that maybe you guys can start making use of that software solution if you are an Office 365 user. And even if you're not, it's a great way to get exposed to the program. It's 10 to 15 minutes, as you guys know. And I look forward to seeing you guys next month. So everybody stay warm, and I will see you in February.